And yes, we are live. Hello, and welcome to the HockeyBuzzcast. This is Tuesday, and we're going to go right into this because we're gonna do some questions and answers. I've got some questions already. I'm going to post something real quick though to Twitter about this. So let me do that real quick.
And we shouldn't interpret your headgear as an acknowledgement that the Expo should be coming back to Montreal as a transfer.
Not at all. No, it's just my favorite hat, and running around today with the kids trying to get some appointments set up for my son who's got issues again medically, but we'll worry about that later. I just didn't get a chance to make myself look as beautiful as normal, so I'm going with the Expos hat, which I think
I've got the monopoly on beauty today, right?
Make people be at least nice to me, hopefully in Canada.
Yes. No, I refer to, and I'm going to use this as a debate subject tomorrow on the webcast, on the Buzzcast. What is the more boring of the two in terms of sporting for the year? This week, which is, there's nothing going on except the Major League All-Star game, which is tonight in Cincinnati, or that 2 weeks in between the NFC AFC championship game and the Super Bowl when the Pro Bowl and the NHL All-Star game happen. Right. To me, they're about 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It's just such a bore each time. It's just a question of which one is more boring.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. I got a really good idea. We're going to do. Somebody sent me this idea and I loved it. Was to do an opposite awards for the year. Meaning, if somebody whoever would win the Art Ross in that case would be the person who scored the least amount of points or least amount of goals in the most amount of games played. Figure it out that way. Figure out the worst goals against average for the
worst amount of goals for the salary.
Right, yeah, because we could put that one in there too. But we were going to go directly off of the Lady Bing would be to the player with the most penalty minutes, that kind of thing. We do an opposite.
So Steve Downey is the opposite Lady Bing, and Alex Semin is the opposite of the Rocket Richard.
Right, exactly. And hand out these awards at some point. We'd each nominate a person, and so we'd have players nominated. Then we put it out there for votes, and then
I'm all for that.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. So start getting your thoughts together on that. I'll tell Kevin and the rest of the crew as well.
Sure.
Let me see something. Just popping this out for everybody to see. And then we will start right in. All right. Got that good. Share. Okay. Sorry for this exciting beginning.
Yeah, I was debating whether there were some ways that the NHL could spice up the All-Star game. Whether they, maybe they make the All-Star game a 3-on-3.
Have it be 40-40 the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, hey, well, why not? It's pretty much a joke in terms of it's shinny. As we've said for more than a few years, it's not a real game. So if you're going to make it a scoring exhibition, then why not make it 3-on-3 and make it a real scoring exhibition?
See that, but I think that as a member of the goalies union, I would have issues with this because goalies are already basically hung out to dry in these things. So,
I understand that, and maybe you bring a couple extra goaltenders along just for target practice.
Yeah, right. And let's talk about goalies getting hurt. Oof. Really potential. All right, so let's see. We got people in the chat room already.
Stretch your groins, goalies. And I'm not going to elaborate on that.
Yes. As the famous John Buccigross once said on ESPN, raise your groin if it's not pulled. One of my favorites of all time. All right. So yes, Brandon, I'm rocking the Expo hat. If you're in the chat room, appreciate that. I've been home with my son. I got my back injection yesterday. That was so much fun. So we don't want to talk about that. That was horrible. But it's still bad today, but it will be better in the ensuing days. So I've got the electric shock machine that's shocking my back every 5 seconds here as I go. So it's like zzz, zzz. So if I look jumpy or act weird, than normal, that would be why. But yeah, we got so much going down. All right, so let's start with some questions here, and let's do the podcast. It's the July 14th, Tuesday. Anything goes. Pretty much any questions you want to ask. We don't have to answer them, but we will try to answer as many as possible.
And for those history buffs, I believe today is Bastille Day.
Right, that's why I'm wearing the Montreal Expos hat. There you go. Not have a reason to wear it. Bastille Day. Très bien. Très bien. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, July 15th, 2015.
Nope.
It's Tuesday, July 14th. Sorry. Oh, boy. I need a vacation. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, July 14th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time or thereabouts to try to fill you in on what's happening in the hockey world. We come to you year-round, so we're not like the other podcasters who take time off in the summer. No, we talk to you. We find something to discuss every day, and we've got a lot of cool, fun ideas for the summer, as always. And then we're going to towards the end of the summer do a team a day type thing, which is always fun, and we'll take the last 30 days of the summer break leading up to the preseason games, at which time we'll get to talk about them and all the fun that is preseason hockey. And then not too far away from October. It's like 60 some days, I think, until we actually get there. So yeah, we're the hockey is mercifully short. And as Mike said beforehand, this is the worst week in sports right now. One of the worst weeks in sports because we have nothing going on at all. Baseball's in their All-Star break, which if nothing else, you at least have baseball to put on at night. Nothing now. Forced to watch television.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Luckily, there are some good shows on. There's Ray Donovan and with Liev Schreiber, who is the voice of was the voice of HBO 24/7 and was a star in the hockey movie Goon, and a few others. But yeah, no, this is the week to catch up on the shows that you've missed
for sure. And let's start with the questions right from our chat room, and then we'll go to the comments thread, and then we'll also go into Twitter, so you can feel free to reply me on Twitter any which way you want to today. Yes, Pyatt did retire today. I believe I heard that too.
Taylor Pyatt did retire. Well, yeah, so. I mean,
Jeff Peppers brings us to that in the chat room. We appreciate that. All right, let's start off here with Z107-28727, which is by far the easiest name to remember. So, Mr. Z107-28727.
Great. I may suggest don't use your social security number as your screen name.
Yeah, I don't think
it's not good for security reasons.
Well, that can't be a social security number because he would be born in what, like in 1928? Isn't the middle number? Or...
Well, it could be 0. It could be 010.
Ah, true. All right. Well, anyway, does Dallas have anything up their sleeves? He asked the question, which is a really good question because yes, they do. They absolutely do. They're
arms.
They're shy defensively, very shy defensively. I mean,
to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, they make the Flyers look like a defensive powerhouse right now. So yeah, at this point, they're definitely in on Johnny Oduya, and I think that's one of the players that what you talked about yesterday is a fascinating thing because we watched Oduya. Basically, everyone figured he was going to sign in Chicago. He was waiting to sign in Chicago, and that's what everybody was saying. And then, of course, when they make the Sharp trade, they get back Trevor Daley, which is a really sneaky good move by the Hawks, I have to say. I mean, Trevor Daley brings them something that I don't really think they had in terms of, not just a good offensive defenseman and a good puck moving defenseman, but a mean player, a mean defenseman, which is really something they don't necessarily have. I like Trevor Daley a lot. He's a player that I'm very surprised Jim Nill traded. And Jim Nill's one of the best, no question about it in my mind, one of the best out there. So for Jim Nill to have traded him, I think he had a good idea that he was going to make another move. I don't think there has to be something else, and I think you're either looking at Oduya or Franzen, could be a good fit for them too.
Or a trade.
Or a trade, yeah. And there's defensemen available out there via trade too.
That's where you look at that roster right now. We were talking about it a little bit yesterday. I mean, with them trading Daley, You have Goligoski and you have Jason Demers, who are UFAs. They have Klingberg, who they just signed on a long-term deal. And then basically you have a bunch of young kids who could end up being really good, but they're unknown commodities like Jyrki Jokipaka and Jamie Alexiak and Stephen Johns, who they got in the deal. So there's like 3 or 4 guys. I think Patrick Nemeth is another one. You're talking about 3 or 4 guys who could be NHL defensemen, but they're not known commodities. And the thing is, I believe Dallas is in the neighborhood of $8 million under the cap. I'll look as when we move forward, but they have the room to sign a defenseman. But and as you said, Ek, I mean, Oduya would be a good fit. Maybe Franzen would be a good fit on a short-term deal. But I have the feeling that it's more trade than it is signing, because they've got a contract that I think that they want to get rid of after a year, which is Ales Hemsky.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And if they go out and trade for a defenseman who's got a couple years left in a contract, I have a feeling that Hemsky would be the one sort of flipped out. I mean, if there was anything to like Dion Phaneuf rumors to Dallas, which they've been off and on, I know for the last couple of years about potential interest there, I think Hemsky would be part of any deal going back to Toronto. But Jim Nill has options, but they're so heavy up front with the guys that they have, Sagan and Ben and Spezza and now Sharp, that they really, to have a legitimate chance of making the playoffs and advancing, they need to solidify their blue line.
Yeah, they do. And I think that's best. But I mean, I really do think there will be trades available for them out there shortly. There's a couple teams that are definitely getting heavy on defense, have a lot of defensemen. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised too if for this would be the place, where Cody Franzen signs a short deal, or, and this is also a great place, a really potentially great place for Oduya to go. So, Oduya, I've heard and mentioned with them a lot. I still hear Oduya with Boston quite a bit. So, but yet he still hasn't signed, which makes you wonder. I mean, it's interesting. Every day that goes by, it makes you wonder still if Chicago maybe has something else up their sleeves too. And is telling him to hang out, because for Oduya not to be signed at this point means that that's his decision not to be signed yet. So I'm pretty, and it's a weird game to play because team salaries are filling up. So
yeah, I read an article in the Chicago Tribune this morning that said the likelihood of Oduya re-signing with the Blackhawks is significantly lower now that they got Daly. But maybe there's a possibility that Roosevelt comes back. They probably could get Roosevelt on a 1-year deal for low money. Coming off the injury, he may want to come back and thinks that team has another chance at winning a Stanley Cup. And the money might be right, so that might be where they go.
Yeah, for sure. Steve Costello in the chat room asks a question: how do you think the arbitration with MDZ, otherwise known as Michael Del Zotto, and the Flyers is going to go? What type of deal? How much? How long? Etc. The Flyers have Del Zotto in a really interesting spot right here, because he is, as you know, they gave him a chance last year, very similar to what Nashville did with Ribeiro, and he thrived. He turned back into the defenseman that kind of everybody was expecting him to be when he was started off with the Rangers and had a sidetrack there and got his life back together. And now, of course, wants to get paid for that. Well, the Flyers still have the option to not, he's not a UFA yet, so he's an RFA. He's filed for arbitration. The Flyers very rarely take players to arbitration. It usually gets worked out before they get there. And if they do take him to arbitration, the Flyers have been known to just say, forget it, on the deal. I don't think that's going to happen here, but surely Del Zotto has been looking at the rookie roster camp the Flyers just had with all the with all this great additions, and Russ talked about it yesterday. Mm-hmm. Where Provorov is going to probably make the team. There's a good chance, Moran or Gastabier could make the team too, I've heard. So this is a very packed up team, and Del Zotto is a very one-dimensional defenseman. He's very much a one-way D-man, but he is very good at being a one-way D-man and does add a lot of offense. So they want to get him. I think my guess is this goes to arbitration. He gets 5-ish, somewhere in there, maybe for his numbers. Hard to say. Flyers probably take a 1-year deal. Probably not 2, maybe 2, depending on how low it is. And then he's gonna have his work cut out for him, because he's gonna be competing against a lot better competition than he did before.
Well,
so, who knows?
I mean, you look at the Flyers defense right now, and I mean, as you said, Del Zotto thrived in an offensive role, which he, that is the type of defenseman he is.
Oh, yeah.
But they have Mark Streit, and he's that same type of defenseman. You bring in Medvedev from the KHL. I believe he's more of an offensive type of defenseman. Now, I'm not even considering the rookies. They added Radko Gudas at the deadline. I think he's an NHL defenseman. I think he fits in as a bottom pairing guy for the Flyers. They may want to be conservative in terms of, Gostisbehere coming off the ACL, Morin, still, I believe he's 19 years old. There's no rush here. I mean, you've got NHL bodies on this blue line. I don't think that, they have a great defense, but not sure unless these defensemen like Morin or Gostisbehere or even Provorov are playing top four roles that they're going to make. If they're bottom pairing guys, better to send them back to junior or to the AHL. But if they're going to be on your top four, then I would say keep them around. I think Provorov has that chance. Not sure about the other guys, at least right away, but maybe a year or two down the line. It's beneficial for the team in terms of the player getting experience and salary cap wise to keep these guys down and then bring them up when they're ready.
And Hextall has said time and time again that he doesn't want to rush players. He's been all about patience. Last year was about patience. So I think that, Del Zotto definitely has a spot on the team this season. But beyond that, the other thing is, I mean, when you look at these contracts, the way the teams are getting so strangleholded into contracts, I think that's why we're seeing so many arbitrations that are probably going to go to arbitration, that we haven't seen in the past. I think that, that when we're looking at all these players that are getting lead chucked, as we like to call it, that's arbitration is a better option because it's a 1 or 2 year deal. So you're not stuck in that spot. So,
and it gives the team the freedom. If Del Zotto gets $5 million, as you speculated, yeah. I'd say it's a 50-50 proposition that the Flyers walk away because that's too much.
It depends. They're not for 1 year. They might say okay. For 1 year they might say okay because they really. I mean, remember they traded Grossman. They don't have. I mean, as far as experienced defensemen go, now they could look out there and say, okay, we'll sign Cody Franson for $2.5 million and see you later, Michael. That kind of thing. That's very possible. There are some, as we've talked about before, some still solid defensemen out there, and some good veteran defensemen too that we really don't talk about that are out there too. So, yeah, like players like that, even beyond Ehrhoff, like
Merit Zidlicki.
Zidlicki wants to play, right? And he looked pretty good last year in the temporary mode for the Red Wings. So, I don't know. We'll see how this plays out. But going to the chat route, to the comment thread now, Watson Nosdahl asks, why did you decide to unmask yourself, Eck? I think I've said this many times. It's for the girls. It's definitely for the girls. Because, the problem with being an anonymous hockey blogger, no one's seeing my face, is that I wasn't mobbed by groupies when I went to hockey games. So now I am mobbed by groupies, and I appreciate that. So that's definitely was the reason I did it. Also, we have Trent, who asks, do you expect the Isles to make any trades this summer? That's a good question, Trent. I'm telling you, that's a really good question. I haven't heard anything, right? I haven't heard anything. So I'm just basically going on speculation here. There's no rumor that I'm going off of here. But I mean, before we talked about Okposo, and Okposo was going to go. But the whole plan on that was that they would get Sharp and then they would trade Okposo. So without getting Sharp, now, who else is out there that could come in? I don't know why they would even think about trading Okposo, in my opinion, but there was definitely a name that was out there. So,
and the thing is, Zach, I expect the Islanders to contend for a playoff spot, and maybe, based on their young players having the same type of year that they did last year to, have a better chance of advancing. And if they do, then I don't see them trading Okposo during the season or at the deadline unless they're getting help that they can retain going forward, a hockey deal rather than a dump rent-a-player deal because he's a UFA. Those will be tough to make at the deadline because most teams that are trading for Okposo want to trade futures or draft picks. So, maybe there's a chance at an Okposo deal before training camp starts if they can't get him locked up or if they want to get him locked up on a long-term deal.
Right. And that's, I mean, remember it was just last year that, 2 years ago now that Okposo was, had a killer season and was really people were debating why he wasn't on the U.S. team,
Mm.
I don't know. So I don't know. I think that there's something. What's really fascinating to me is the whole concept that we're seeing of teams going slow versus teams going fast. You know, I mean, I don't know if you saw the comments by the Arizona Coyotes general manager Maloney, but he came out and said, "We're fast tracking players." And he came right out and said it. We're trying to fast track these guys. We're doing a special rookie camp to fast track these guys to get them NHL ready. You know, good, interesting switch from what we've heard from most teams where they say we're going to take their time. Obviously, Arizona's in a spot right now, right? They have to prove. They have to be good right away. They have to bring excitement. So, and there's a real interesting dichotomy here going on in my mind between Maloney and the head coach, who his name escapes me for a second.
Dave Tippett.
Tippett, thank you, because I heard Tippett interview as well, and he was not quite as zealful about that. You know, like he wasn't quite saying, okay, we're going to fast track these guys. We obviously need talent in the NHL, but you know, it also sounded a little bit like a negotiation thing from Maloney, because Maloney's definitely talking to a lot of free agents out there right now to get some scoring up. I've heard Scotty Upshaw, who remember was a Coyote for a while. I've heard his name mentioned back there. So, you know, and now I like Scotty Upshaw a lot. I think if he's healthy, he's definitely a second line player who can give you lots of minutes and can score 20 goals for you. His health has been an issue for sure. But I know he liked it there. I know they liked him there. Now I just got a text too that I don't know if you saw this or not, but this is from Andy Strickland, that Oduya turned down $3 million, 3 years, $15 million offer from the Sabres several days ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the Sabres are in position, he says, to offer the most money, which is true. But you know, so I don't know if that's going to be that's the case or not. But Andy Strickland's usually pretty good with these things. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the Sabres definitely have a hole on their blue line after trading Zadorov, who a lot of people thought was going to be a top four defenseman. You know, they do have Ristolainen and McCabe and you know, the veterans and Bogosian and Georges and you know, a couple other young defensemen, but they definitely need another defenseman. And you know, there's the possibility of Oduya. I mean, it makes sense. Maybe Franzen to a lesser extent. I think they know Franzen from facing him 4 or 5 times a year when he was with the Leafs. Right. But you know, I think the Sabres. I mean, let's not get confused here. The Sabres are not going to contend for a playoff spot this year, but they, you know, Oduya is young enough that in 2 or 3 years, when they are ready to contend for a playoff spot, you know, he's a good enough player that and has that experience that they want to add that to that organization. So if he, you know, he may break down and eventually take that offer, because I don't see him getting $5 million a year from a lot of teams right now, because there's just not the cap room. But
right,
going back to Arizona for a second, I mean, yeah, certain players I'm sure are being fast tracked. I'm sure that Max Domi is. I'm sure that probably Anthony Duclair is. I would be surprised if Dylan Strome is. I think Dylan Strome is going back to Erie. I can't see them putting him in a situation, 3rd pick overall. You know, it'll be just like Kyle Turris. You know, you know, Kyle Turris came in as a 3rd pick overall. I don't think he came in as an 18-year-old. I think he came in as a 19-year-old, and everybody expected him to really, you know, step forward and be that number 1 center, to be that centerpiece player. He never was in Arizona, and even after he got traded to Ottawa, he's not a number 1 center. He's probably a good number 2. So if they want to properly develop Dylan Strome, he should stay with the Erie Otters next year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Next up, Maxime Tellier wants to know, do you think the Canucks are, it's moving so fast, I lost it for a second there. Basically, do I think the Canucks are going to make some more moves and maybe flip some players, get some 1-year guys in there? The Canucks are another good. What I've been surprised about with the Canucks so far has been the fact that they were so quiet on UFA Day. They have really acted as if they're sticking with basically the team they had. Mm-hmm. And the team they had, you know, it did make the playoffs through great coaching and you know, and some pretty opportunistic things that happened for them. But I mean, the Canucks are one of those teams that could make the playoffs, or they could be in the lottery. You know, like I just don't. It's so hard to say where they're going to fall. The players are, you know, they have to expect great years. And, you know, that rebound year after getting rid of the, you know, the horrible coach that they had, and then bringing in a great coach in Desjardins, there was definitely a bounce back year. Now, how long that sustains that kind of, good feeling is questionable. And I think that the Canucks last year, their beginning of the season got them in the playoffs. As the year went on, they fell a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, they rode after Ryan Miller got hurt. They rode Eddie Lack to the playoffs,
right?
And they now I mean, their goaltending situation. I mean, they had to resolve it one way or the other. They had to either trade Lack or Markstrom, and they ended up trading Lack. I mean, Markstrom is an NHL goaltender. He had a great
really
year.
Curious in a lot of ways. I mean, don't you think so? I mean, I just think that I'm not going to ever question what the Canucks do with goaltending, because the Canucks and goaltending have been really a crazy scenario. But I thought trading Lack after he did get you into the playoffs last year was really kind of strange.
Well, I think the number one guy is Miller, and they didn't want that same debate that they had for years with Schneider and Luongo. They signed Miller. Miller is making the most money. Miller is the number one goaltender. There you go. Now, Markstrom, maybe down the line, a couple years will be, the number one, maybe not. But I think that was the whole point. The whole point was to just reestablish Miller. Miller played well in the first half of the season, then got hurt. And, we know that what happened with Lack, and Lack probably was going to want more money than they were willing to pay a backup goaltender. And they had Markstrom, who they had to make a decision on. What I find interesting is the fact that they got rid of Bieksa. They only got a second round pick for him. Now, maybe that's good value in the sense that he was, he's starting to slip. He's one of those tough defensemen who, a lot of minutes, a lot of wear and tear.
So much on, like another reason why they look like they're heading towards rebuild. And the real thing about rebuild is, Ryan Miller is, how does he fit into this? Like I still, when I first heard, I want to admit this, that it was just something I was looking into. I heard about the Sharks talking with the Canucks, and it was reported then it was looking like Bieksa, and that almost got done to the point where Bieksa thought he was going there. But it didn't. Right. So, but when I first heard discussions about that, the first thing that popped into my head was Ryan Miller. Like, if you're going to go, you had Eddie Lack do so well for you, you're going to rebuild. Why not send Miller to the Sharks? The Sharks, that's always felt like the perfect fit for Ryan Miller, right?
Right.
It seems like he would accept a trade there because he's going to a team that has a better chance at winning than the Canucks. Even though the Sharks didn't make the playoffs last year, I still think that they're closer than the Canucks. In my opinion, I might be wrong. I might be underrating the Sharks a little bit, but when you trade Bieksa, who's been such a cornerstone for your team for such a long time, for a draft pick, I mean, that's a strange. That's really, to me, that's as if you're throwing the towel a little bit here.
Well, I mean, I think what's going on and what Trevor Linden and Jim Benning are trying to do is they're trying to remain competitive and retool and not do the teardown. It's impossible for them to do the teardown because who in the hell is going to take the Sedins at $14 million a year? You can't trade them separately. You'd have to trade them together. And if you're going through a rebuild, the Sedins sort of, undercut the rebuild because you'll be too good. Having them around, they'll score too many points. They'll win too many games for you to really bottom out. So you keep the Sedins. They're under contract for another couple years. I think it's 2 or 3. It's 3 years. Verbata scored I think he scored a career high in goals as their winger. You have young guys like Bo Horvath coming in. Bonino, they got in the deal from Anaheim for Kessler. You've got some good young defensemen. And they're going to try to remain competitive, make the playoffs, while at the same time develop their young guys. Draft, they have Jake Virtanen and their former first-round pick, and they're adding prospects to the organization. And Benning, from his history with the Bruins, has a good eye for talent. But the thing is, that's right now they're sort of in a holding pattern, and they're sort of doing the retool, but not the rebuild. So they probably are going to be in that 7, 8, 9, 10 mix in the West,
right?
And not bottom out, because I don't think they can bottom out unless they have like massive injuries.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Let's ask a couple more questions here. First, Jeff Fleming and Montreal 3er in the chat room asked these questions about the Canadiens and what's up with the Canadiens right now. Would Bergevin be opposed to making a trade? I am not ever going to say Bergevin won't make trades. He's one of my favorite GMs in the league, I have to say. He's one of the ones that I respect the most. With the exception of me not really being on board with why he has Michel Therrien coaching them. But that's besides that point. I think as far as player personnel moves, he makes great ones, I think. Most of them have been very good. And he's also not afraid to trade a player away like he did last year, or, move a player for a player. If he sees the right position, he's done well by me, and he's always trying to do something and keeps the Montreal talk interesting for sure, if nothing else. And yes, they definitely, the thing they really want to do, from what I've heard, is they want to move a center and probably, hold on, I have a note right here. Let me look at my notes for this because I had a really interesting notes on these guys. Sorry, I hate to do that to you, but 1 second. I had really good notes on this. Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, Mike, for 1 second, because I remembered I took a note just this morning on these guys. 1 second, let me bring it up on my.
The name that has come up for in regards to Montreal for months in terms of them wanting to trade him is Lars Eller.
Right. Lars Eller, yes. Thank you. That's exactly that was the name, definitely, for sure. Right now, I've heard that with Lars Eller and Desharnais, who they like, but they don't love Desharnais, from what I've been told. And there are two centers there, right? And they obviously look at Plekanec as their number one center.
Right.
No questions asked, right? But after that, there really is a strong belief that Galchenyuk has to play center on this team for them to be successful. That he has to really be one of their top line centers, if not their top center. He probably does have the potential to be more their top center and have Plekanec play second line center, which is really what he is. Like I've said for a long time that when Montreal went to the Cup, semis last year, that really they were a team with three second lines and a third line. Is what it felt like. But it felt like they had no first line. But they had three second lines, which made them really strong and really tough to beat. And they really didn't have a fourth line. I thought their fourth line was very good then. It was good enough to be called a third line. So the problem here is, they have this logjam of centers. So they keep putting Galchenyuk on the wing, and that's really not working, especially up top at the general manager. And I'm not going to say there's a rift here, but I've heard that there's a difference in opinion here between on Galchenyuk and how to play him. But I think Bergevin wants him as a center, one of the top two centers, and that means you gotta look at Desharnais and you gotta look at Eller. Both of them, are tough. Both have the same exact cap hit, if I remember right. Yeah, they do. I'm looking right now. They both have the same cap hit. Lars Eller signed for 1 more year at 3.5. Lars Eller at 3.5 is perfectly reasonable. That's a perfectly reasonable contract for 3 more years. I don't think there's anything wrong. That he's a $3.5 million player, and Lars Eller could have good success if he went somewhere where he got the right role.
But he's not an offensive player, and that's the problem right now. I mean,
right. He's not. He's been their third line center for most of the time. But you have Desharnais in there too. Now Desharnais is I think wildly inconsistent. Like I watch the Canadiens a lot, and he's fast as the wind, but he makes some really questionable decisions.
And he's small.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the dilemma for the Canadiens right now is the fact that, yes, I don't think Therrien wants to play Galchenyuk at center because he doesn't think he's good enough defensively right now to handle the responsibilities. Plekanec is 1 year away from being an unrestricted free agent. So they sort of have to find out whether Galchenyuk can play center, because that determines whether they have to sign Plekanec long-term or not. You can't keep Eller and Desharnais as a third, if they do move Galchenyuk to the middle, you can't keep both of them as your third and fourth line centers. That means you're spending $3.5 million on a fourth line center. So
precisely,
and so I think that's the dilemma. The other thing is, and it hasn't been talked about much, but Max Pacioretty hurt his knee last week, is going to be out for 3 months. He's going to be out probably until the beginning of the regular season. It has to be a pretty serious injury if it was a 3-month injury. I didn't hear if it was MCL tear or anything, specific, but if he's out, okay, great. He misses the exhibition schedule and he misses the preseason games, and maybe misses a week. You don't know when he comes back, if he's going to be Max Pacioretty or not. It may take, a month or two for him to get back to where he was last year, which was scoring 37 goals for the Montreal Canadiens and being basically their only offensive threat. This team was challenged enough offensively last year. If you don't have Pacioretty, you're in trouble. And that's why I think Bergevin has to go out and find himself some secondary offense this summer. And he may be like you said yesterday, waiting on a guy like Yuri Tlusty as a depth forward. But I think they need to go out and get another scoring threat. Otherwise, if Pacioretty is slow to respond or not himself early in the season, the games you lose in October and November will come back to bite you in March and April.
No, for sure. And that's the issue right now, right? They really have to figure this out. And it's not going to be an easy one. Next question is from JFKST1 in our comments thread. And he asked the really burning question today is, do you think there'll be any fallout from the Ryan O'Reilly incident, which is going on right now? No. As we speak still. There was Tim Murray did issue a statement just recently. Now, if you're not aware, this is what happened essentially. Yesterday, Ryan O'Reilly, or 2 nights ago maybe, Ryan O'Reilly crashed his pickup truck into a Tim Hortons while drinking, under the influence. No one was hurt, thank God. I mean, no, this is really, could have really been terrible. He not only crashed his truck, he actually left the scene of the accident too, which is not good for anyone who's ever been in an accident. You should never do that. But obviously, so he was released on bail, and this is in Ontario, and is going to have a hearing on August 10th, and could actually face some charges here. Will probably face some charges here for sure. The Sabres said we are aware of the reports regarding the incident involving Ryan O'Reilly last week. We are currently in the process of gathering more information and will have no further comment until we have spoken with all the parties involved. Okay, so according to the Ontario Provincial Police, this is from Garth's blog today. The newly acquired Buffalo Sabres center Ryan O'Reilly has been charged with impaired driving after allegedly driving his green 1951 vintage Chevy pickup truck into a Tim Hortons restaurant last week. 4:01 a.m. on the 9th of July is when this whole happened. So anyway, there you have it. It's not. It's really a bad situation, and obviously the Sabres is the last thing they needed after just signing him to a big deal, and pretty surprising. But do I think that there will be fallout? It's hard to say. I don't think so. I don't think there'll be that much fallout. I think Ryan O'Reilly's going to have to step up and do something here. In terms of a public apology or say something, or get involved in some kind of program where he talks about drunk driving in the Buffalo area or something like that, to really show that he realizes what he did was wrong, and that's just crazy. I'm not a drinker, I don't drink, but I've been around hockey players enough to know that this is I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. I do know that. And I do know that hockey players have been pulled. I do know personally that, and this is not a statement on police at all, but just personally, I've known hockey players who've gotten pulled over while intoxicated and just given a warning because they were recognized as a player, in their town. Ryan O'Reilly in Ontario, the difference is, he's not in Buffalo, but and the other difference is obviously you're not just pulled over, you ran into a Tim Hortons. So it's not like this is going to be something you can cover up at all. So.
Yeah, and he was brought in to the Sabres organization. He's a 24-year-old player. He's been in the league since he was 18.
Yep.
He was brought in to be a leader.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that is going to, and we don't know all the details. I'm sure that they'll come out during the summer. But in the end, he's probably, as you said, going to have to step up. And if he was brought in and, he was signed to a 7-year deal for making $7.5 million, and he purportedly was brought in to be a leader on this team, he's going to have to say, well, I made a mistake, and I own the mistake, and I will do my utmost to rectify it. I think that's that's incumbent upon him to do that, right, if he is going to be a leader. If it was somebody else, if it was somebody younger, if it was another player who was not expected to be a leader on the team, then maybe it would sort of be brushed away. But I think he is one of the centerpieces that this organization brought in this summer. So I think he's going to have to step up and defend it and, go forward with it.
Yeah, definitely. There's no truth to the fact he's going to be doing commercials for Tim Hortons saying now how he just couldn't wait to get to Tim Hortons. Someone sent me that today. That's all.
I'm not going to say
very bad taste. We can only make the joke because honestly, no one was hurt. And I'm sure that this is definitely, it's a scary, scary situation. Yeah. So Danny Elwood says, put him in front of some mad mothers who lost their children and tell them the stories, tell them stories so he mans up. I agree with that. That's not a bad idea, Danny. Jeff Peppers asks, if I like Drinkatoast so much, why do I prefer, do I like root beer and other sodas? Well, of course. Take a Boost, Drinkatoast, whatever you want to call it, is a fantastic drink, which I've talked about before. It makes you insanely hyper.
Great. That's what I really want, is to drink something that makes me insane.
Oh, absolutely. It does. I'm sure you've seen my other drinks of choice. I have two of them right on the table right now, of course, are always the Gold Peak iced teas, which are fantastic iced teas. I know you're a fan of these too, Mike.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan of the Mexican Coke.
Okay. Mexican Coke, yeah, which is here. But Gold Peak, if you're an iced tea drinker, Diet Gold Peak iced tea is by far the best diet drink you can drink anywhere. This really is crazy good if you're a diet drinker. We used to be hooked on Gold Peak sweet just sugar. I don't like lemon in my teas. Lemons don't belong in tea. But I definitely think Gold Peak Diet is by far the best diet drink on the market. By far, not even close. But Mexican Coke, yep, is my real when I really need to. If you ever, here's a little tip: if you see me drinking Mexican Coke, it's not been a great day. It's been a day that I've had to deal with a lot of crap, and I'm exhausted already. So, but Mexican Coke definitely will give you a shot in the arm, and now it's available in more and more places. I've noticed.
Yes.
It's really starting to become extremely popular. You can get it in your local Wawa if you live in a place that has a thing called Wawa.
And for people who appreciate Coca-Cola in bottles, the distinction of the taste of Coca-Cola between bottles and cans and plastic, it tastes so much better in a glass bottle.
Yeah, especially Mexican Coke in glass bottles. I mean, regular Coke in glass bottles is awesome too. I agree with you, but Mexican Coke, the difference is that this is made with sugar and not high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
Which is the way Coca-Cola was made when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s and 70s. Yep. So it definitely takes you back a little bit. This is the way Coke should be drunk. And it was funny because I remember they used to always have commercials for Coke. And you'd always see a guy drinking a big glass bottle like this, and they didn't even sell them anywhere.
Yeah, like Mean Joe Green.
Yeah, right.
Down. Yeah. No, they used to be 16-ounce glass bottles.
Right.
I know, because my mother used to go out and buy 8 packs of 16-ounce glass bottles of Coke, and in about 3 days they'd be gone.
yeah, I know. Isn't that something? I know it's great. I mean, it's just it's a lot, I'd never get them too big of quantities for that reason. Like, you do drink them if you have them. Okay, so let's go on here. Back to the chat room. Did I ever have a Fitz root beer? I have not. I have had Fitz root beer. I don't mind root beer.
I like root beer.
Yeah.
A&W is pretty good.
Sassafras root beer. Have you ever had that? That I like. I think that's
there's I can't remember the name, but there is a company that puts out pure cane sugar root beer that's really good. I also like birch beer and cream soda. So I'm let me pull one here out of the chat. Do you think that Phil Kessel will crack the 40 goal mark with the Penguins?
Yes, I do. I honestly do. No, you can answer your question too, Mike, but you can definitely answer this after me. But I think that, and I'm sorry for jumping in and saying that. You can answer before me if you want to. But all right, I'll start. I do think that Phil Kessel will score more than 40 goals. And if you want to place another bet on it, Mike, we're welcome to. But I honestly think
I think he's going to score closer to 50.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, that doesn't necessarily mean the Penguins are going to be a great team, but I think that they will. I think he, paired with it appears to be paired with Sid, although we've heard they could be paired with Malkin. It's all up in the air. It doesn't matter. I mean, whoever he's playing with a player is more talented than anybody he's ever played with anywhere. Even on Team USA, there's no one to Malkin or Crosby's level. So I think that he's going to be playing with somebody that's really outstanding, and he's going to be playing in a system. And this is the best thing about it. And I really haven't heard this mentioned too much about Phil Kessel. I should write a blog on this at some point. Maybe I will. But the best thing about this is he's going to a city that actually understands the kind of players like Phil Kessel. Like this is a city that has not been hard on players. Like, remember Kevin Stevens, for example? Okay, Kevin Stevens was like really good. He was very much a Phil Kessel type player. He's a one-dimensional player who had tons of speed.
Pierre LaRouche back in the day.
Pierre LaRouche, right. Mario, Sidney, Crosby, obviously, Malcolm, Yager. Right. These are guys who were not expected to play defense. They were simply expected to score goals, and the Penguins fans love their stars, and they love skill, and they love speed, and they're going to eat up Phil Kessel, and they're not going to have any problems with him. No jokes there implied.
Yes.
They are, but they're not going to have any issue with him at all. He's going to be dangerous. He's going to be a really big factor for the Penguins, and
I think it's funny that Jeff's question was something that was I think derived from Ron Wolfson's recent comments on NHL.com, and I find it fairly hilarious. What's that?
What did Ron say? I didn't hear that.
Well, he said that he thinks Kessel will score 40 goals. Okay. And I find it hilarious that this is the same Ron Wolfson that when Randy Carlyle was fired, blamed Kessel as being an inconsistent player and, was on for 2 weeks and off for 2 weeks. And that was one of the contributing reasons to why Carlyle was fired. But now, of course, since he's going to Pittsburgh, he's going to be this consistent goal scorer and score 40. I don't think he's going to be consistent. I just think that with Sidney Crosby and with Malkin, he's going to score a lot more goals in the stretches when he is hot than he did in Toronto. He's going to score 40, 45 goals. I don't think there's any doubt. He's going to have to play with a better center than he did in Toronto. Although I don't rip Tyler Bozak because it was incumbent upon Toronto's management to go out and get a better center, and they never did. So, but I think Kessel will thrive in Pittsburgh. I think he'll score goals. He'll give them what they were looking for. But the whole point of that deal was not, Toronto thinking that Kessel wasn't able to score. They weren't interested in having his goals.
Right.
They want to bottom out and rebuild without Kessel there. And I think that moving him was the first step, and you're going to see a couple more steps over the next year of them moving out players. So it's like I said, I think it was a win-win scenario for both teams.
Yeah, it really was. And when you think about it in retrospect, it's a great place for Phil to go, and it's a and the pressure's not going to be on him, like you said. He's going to be able to. I mean, the pressure's on Crosby, but the fans are actually, there's never really pressure on the Stars in Pittsburgh. It's funny. I've never really noticed that they really are very forgiving of their stars. They're not so forgiving of their goalies, but they're forgiving of their stars. And even Malkin, who I think could have been criticized very easily last year a lot, didn't take that much criticism. So yeah.
Somebody in the chat says IBC root beer. That was the one I was thinking about. It was IBC root beer. Another question from Z107. I'll just shorten your name since we know each other so well.
Yes.
Is anyone going to sign Mike Richards or Jared Stoll, or did their incidents end their careers?
Yeah, Fly Freaky in our comments thread had the same kind of question on Mike Richards. I don't know. Stoll might have a better chance of getting signed because he still was a pretty effective player last year, more than anything else. I mean, these incidents that happen off the ice happen a lot with a lot of players that we don't ever hear about, and the NHL has a substance abuse program that people are sent to, and I know some players in the NHL right now that went there that no one has any idea that they went there, but they did. And so the NHL itself, this unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, is still a league that if a player can help you, you're gonna look past that. Someone will look past it. I think the interesting thing about Stoll that I've heard is that Martin Jones was connected with that story too and didn't take the fall, but did get traded really quickly. So that was kind of curious. Though that's just speculation, of course, but I don't know this for fact. So, but there was lots of speculation at the time this whole thing went down that Martin Jones was in the same incident and didn't get, for whatever reason, didn't get caught or what have you, but then was dealt rather kind of quickly afterwards. The Richards thing, and the Richards thing is not, I don't think, as blown up as people say it is. I mean, obviously what happened at the border with him was a tough situation. There's no question that there's a story to be written here, and I've talked about writing it before about Oxycontin and Percocet and things like that are of players who are hooked on this because their teams have got them started on this when they had injuries. So I'm not trying to wipe Mike Richards' clean slate here, but I'm just saying that I really want to know more about this story before I pass all this crazy judgment. I mean, I've been very judgmental of Mike Richards in the past for things I've seen him do, but all that stuff was really pretty much just Philadelphia and not in LA, where he seemed to have gotten a lot more maturity. And unfortunately, I think some concussions took his game away, and specifically, a concussion that happened a few years back in the Anaheim series that just really rocked his boat, and he hasn't been quite the same player, because for Mike Richards to be the player he is, he's got to be a balls out type player. He's just always there. So he hasn't been that, and his game's affected. And I really want to know more about the story, because I don't think Mike Richards is a bad person. I don't think Jared Stoll is either. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think these are the only guys doing this kind of stuff. So again, it's so easy to pass judgment. I mean, you have to figure that for every person caught doing something like this, there's another 10 players or 20 players who are doing cocaine or what have you. You know.
I get the feeling that we haven't heard the last from either one. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Stoll and Richards are the type of players that teams will extend training camp invites to, and say, if you make our team, we'll give you that 1 year deal, one-way deal, 1 year deal. As a let's test this out and see where things are going. Now, Stoll's, I think, older than Richards. Richards just turned 30. I think Stoll's in his early 30s, 32 or 33. So I don't think they're over the hill yet, but they both have one trait that is going against the trend in the NHL. They're not fast skaters. Stoll is a bigger player, and Richards' foot speed has been criticized for a few years. So they may be against the eight ball in that sense. But a team that's competitive, a team that may need that one veteran piece, a Rangers or a team that needs a veteran guy like say the New York Islanders, somebody like that might want to add those players in at a reasonable rate. So I think we may hear their names as invites in September.
Yeah, I agree with that. Luke Ames says impact of Bolesky and Haynes on the lineup of the Bruins. Bolesky and Hayes on the lineup of the Bruins. Bolesky is such a hard player to figure out. I mean, he's either at his best he could become like a Patrick Sharp type player. Really, at his best, like that's the kind of player I see him as. He's got that ability. He sees the ice a similar way. He skates very well. He could go the other way and become like a it's unnumerous players who are just like career second or third liners. So I don't know which way he's going to go yet, but it's not a risk because they got him at a really good number. I have a feeling he wanted to go to Boston and he took that number. I also have a feeling that the money just wasn't there, at all. And
Hayes is a Boston boy.
Right. Hayes is a Boston boy who played well with Florida.
Yeah. And was very excited to sign an extension with the Bruins, and scored 19 goals last year. And the thing is, Lucic has been moved out. Hayes is a big forward, and he's coming in. I hope people realize in Boston that Jimmy Hayes is not the replacement for Milan Lucic. He's not going to be, the guy who enforces the big bad Bruins moniker. He's not
Lucic even the replacement for Lucic lately.
But I'm not saying, he's a big player. And if remember, Blake Wheeler was sort of like not forced out, but moved out of Boston because he was a big player who didn't play a big, robust style, didn't fit in with that Bruins, what the Bruins, joie de vivre is. And that's the thing. It's I think, the Bruins fans are going to have to adjust to the idea that this is not the big bad Bruins anymore. And Jimmy Hayes is a big player who's a skilled player who's going to score goals. And if he plays on the top two lines with either Krejci or Bergeron, you got to remember, Lucic is out, Riley Smith is out, so you're going to expect Jimmy Hayes and Bolesky to replace those guys, and they're going to have to replace the goals that they lost in those deals.
Yeah, and it is definitely a little bit of a step backwards for the Bruins, but they did get a lot of prospects. Are going to make this whole, they kind of, by rebuilding before you really had to rebuild in a way, it's kind of becomes retooling by its instinct, by its nature. So this is a little bit of a retool, I think. Let's go to our next question. So Chase Torini asks a question that for my blog today, which is coming out later. Did we talk about the Sharks and possible news already? I have not gotten into the Sharks yet. I'm going to write about this today for sure. And I'm going to talk about the fact that I've heard Nash rumored to the Sharks now. I did some follow-up yesterday, and that's definitely a possibility. That would have to be, if Rick Nash is going to the Sharks, you'd have to think it was Patrick Marleau plus something. I was told a prospect or two that could be coming back from San Jose. The question is, can you get Patrick Marleau to waive his no-trade clause to go to New York? All I know of Patrick Marleau doesn't make me optimistic that would happen. But, would Joe Thornton go there? I don't think Joe Thornton would go there for sure. Patrick Marleau, perhaps. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the locker room in San Jose, and even like some big time players coming out and saying things that they think the locker room is not strong in San Jose. And Nash is a good locker room guy. He definitely would bring a lot of good stuff to the locker room. He's also got a lot of I mean, obviously he's going to score goals, but more than anything else, Rick Nash and San Jose are kind of a good fit. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, like I think the fact that Rick Nash is pushed is probably good in, personality-wise. Rick Nash and San Jose, Nash and Joe Thornton are very similar type players as far as personality goes. Both great guys, both not seemingly intense, away from the ice, or when you talk to them, you don't get that whole same impression that you get from other players sometimes that are, they're not ultra competitive, which, has rubbed people the wrong way on Thornton, but they both put up numbers. They're both playoff issues, right? They're both playoff problems, right? Mike, that's what you're going to say, right? They put up numbers in the regular season.
Yes, but there is a relationship there, and going not only Team Canada, but if you remember during the lockout, Nash went to Switzerland to play alongside of Thornton in the Swiss League.
Yep, exactly.
So,
that's in my blog.
I think there is that, that would in a way maybe put a salve on the wound in terms of Thornton and San Jose. If you could get his good buddy who he's played with before, who would be the trigger man, and he's still one of the best playmaking centers in the league. But I have reservations about this, as you do, what you just said about Marleau. Marleau has been really adamant about not waiving the no trade and staying in San Jose. And I don't know if I see that changing. I mean, unless they tell him, well, we're just going to sit you. You're not going to play. You can collect your $6.6 million for the next 2 years and enjoy yourself because we're not going to play you. If they force his hand, maybe he waives the no trade clause. But right. I don't see them doing that. So I think
it depends. He's been pretty stalwart about it. And even though I think there's some players in that room that aren't thrilled with him there are players who really like him too. I mean, Patrick Marleau is just a weird duck. Like he's a weird bird, and he's obviously talented. He's a Team Canada guy, and always back on Team Canada because of his all around game. He's very good defensively, so he brings a lot to the table. And I think the Rangers this is a good move. This would be a good way for the new GM of the Rangers to sort of make a statement, and a good way for the new GM of the Sharks to make the new coach of the Sharks to actually turn his team. This brings a lot of new blood to both cities, and it feels like the perfect kind of move. And it also gets the Rangers out quicker because the salary for Marleau isn't as long as the salary for Nash. So that gets the Rangers out quicker too. So there's possibilities there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is if it's not Marleau, if you look, because somebody was asking about other players for the Sharks, I don't think it's Thornton going to New York. I don't see San Jose trading Couture or Pavelski. Maybe they trade Brent Burns.
Not what the Rangers need, though. That's the thing. It's not what the Rangers need in Burns. I mean, that's because Burns is definitely a defender now, right? We pretty much decided that's pretty much been decided upon. The Rangers, though, they need offense. Really, it's really what they need. Now they have signed a couple of their RFAs today. I understand. Someone was pointing this out. I don't know if that's true, but someone wrote in the chat room that a step-on deal could be close, and it could be. I haven't heard anything about it. I'm going to make a call right after the show about that. How is Marleau weird? Jordan Lowe asks. No, he's not. It's not weird. He's just he's a quiet guy. He's very private. And he's definitely a different. I mean, some people just work with people, right? You work with somebody who's just. I don't have anything against Patrick Marleau. I like him as a player and everything like that. Talking to him in the past, he's just a different kind of character, and it's hard to explain necessarily. It doesn't seem like his personality doesn't feel like a New York Broadway lights personality to me. That's all. I'm not a Broadway New York lights guy either, so that's not a cut on him. That's just how I feel. So we'll see. Steve Marshall asks, do you think the Sharks, considering moving Couture, could he be part of a poor locker room culture that has many has suggested exists in San Jose? I haven't gotten that really from Logan Couture. He's definitely part of their moving forward. He's a huge piece of them. He's their youngest, best player that they have. That's young. Pavelski, remember, is over 30 now, which is kind of crazy. But he is. And so Couture is one of the younger, he's like the elder spokesman of that younger group that's coming. And very talented. And yeah, I do think that Couture and Marleau have definitely clashed. But I don't think they'll move Logan Couture for many reasons. I don't think they will. They say, they should make Patrick Marleau a third line player with Joe Thornton, let Logan and Pavs handle first and second lines. And I think that's probably what they're going to do. I really do. I think that you're going to see more of that. Now, remember, Joe Thornton still puts up numbers. Like, he's still a crazy statistical machine.
Yeah. He's a number. I mean, he's in his mid 30s, but he's still a number one center. I mean, he's still, near the top of the league in assists. He's still a very good playmaker. So, your complaints about Joe Thornton
right
on the ice, I mean, they're very limited. I mean, you can't really complain. He puts up numbers. Now, playoffs, we know, it's the same deal with Nash. I mean, Nash,
right,
second year in a row, disappeared for the Rangers, and they got to the conference final game 7. So, I mean, it's understandable why the Rangers would want to move him with 3 years left at nearly $8 million. That's the other thing. It's like that doesn't really that resume doesn't really help the San Jose Sharks, who have been questioned for years about them coming through in the playoffs. And what are you acquiring? Another player who has tough times in the playoffs.
Right. And for whatever reason, he just hasn't succeeded in the playoffs. I mean, and I think Rick Nash my theory on it has always been that he succeeds when the checking in the game lessens, which is during the regular season and during All-Star games and Canada Cup, stuff like that, where you have less checking defensive oriented players out there. Like when you go to an All-Star game, there's almost no one's there for their defensive abilities, right? When you play in the Worlds or the Olympics, most of the players are still picked basically on their offense. I mean, there are some good. Usually they'll have a fourth line or whatever that's defensively minded, but the hard checking that you get in the NHL playoffs doesn't exist in the Olympics. It's not the same kind of game. You don't see the same kind of traps and stuff like that. Plus, there aren't that many teams that can even do that in the Olympics when you're playing against Team Canada. So it's not like an issue of that. So, but he does seem to when he's really been pushed, and it seems like you can check him out of the game and then frustrate him to the point where he stops giving effort. That's what I've noticed, at least. And that sort of happened. I mean, last year he had a couple moments in the playoffs that were pretty good, but not that many. Somebody asked if that. Last question here. Z107 28 727. Yeah, that's some good questions actually. If Dallas got a steal for Sharp, they could do the same to Pittsburgh. They didn't get a steal for Sharp. I'm sorry. I don't think. I mean, if anything, that's more than I thought Chicago would get for Sharp. To be honest,
it was a hockey trade.
It was a hockey trade.
I was surprised that it was a hockey trade, and I was surprised. Yeah. Now, Bill Meltzer said that Daly, who had a career year offensively, gave up a lot of his defensive prowess to put up those offensive numbers. So, I mean, you have to correlate that with his, because he was a plus player, and last year he was a minus player, but he scored 16 goals. Lindy Ruff wanted him to step up his offensive play, and he did, but it was at the cost of playing defense. I think in Chicago, he's going to play more of a balanced role. He'll be a second pairing defenseman along with Yarmulson, while Seabrook and Keith play on the top pairing. But the thing is, as we said earlier, Dallas traded from their place of obvious weakness and gave up a veteran defenseman. So I think there's a move yet to be made. Now, I think Sharp has still got something, but he's 32 and his goal scoring numbers went down last year. So, and he's still making $6 million for another 2 years. This is about Jim Nill trying to bring a culture thing, It's about him trying to bring, and Jim Nill's made a lot of great moves, and this is his, move to get a player who's won a couple Stanley Cups and has some experience. Right. And that's what this is about. And
And I think he's, for my money, the best GM in hockey right now because it's just the kind of moves he does make. He made some really smart moves. I think the Niemi signing is a really good move. It's a very sneaky move because not many people expected him to do that with Lettinen still there, But I think that, with Lettinen's injuries issues, it's going to be a back and forth season. I mean, you could see one of those guys could be moved at the deadline. You could see that happen. And there are still teams out there that aren't particularly 100% in their goalie spot. And who knows where, if the Cam Talbot thing's going to work out in Edmonton or what's going to happen next, there's so many options here still for all these players. So I want to see where this plays out next. But that's all the time we have today. It was a fun show, guys. We enjoy doing these questions and answers once in a while. We'll do some more of them in the summer for sure because they're really fun and they help us we kind of get to be lazy and not have to pick the topics. So that's kind of good. Mike will be back tomorrow. I'm taking my son.
Oh, we lost your volume, Matt. You're muted. You muted yourself. There you go.
There I am. Okay, so my son had some issues before medically, and we may be having to get surgery next week. So we're taking him to Washington, D.C. for his birthday tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, and Saturday and Sunday. So Mike's going to be doing the show for sure with other folks tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. So be nice to him. And he'll have some guests on there for you. It should be all fun. I'll be back probably, Monday, probably we'll be back on Monday because it looks like his surgery won't be till Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So that'll be the case. So I'll be, out when he has surgery for sure. But that should all be back in perfectly in good shape by, in a couple of weeks. And then we'll be going strong through the summer. So we'll have our awards thing after I get back and all that stuff of our, we didn't actually talk about, our awards for the year. I'd like to do 2 shows. I think I'd like to do a show with where we come up with our own awards, which we sort of did last year. And some more interesting awards like, the most underrated left wing type things. And then, then definitely an awards day of the worst of 2014-15. And get into that because there'll be some fun heated debates there. Alexander Semin versus who else? There's plenty of them out there. Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll be back here tomorrow. See you back. Mike will be back here tomorrow. Please join him tomorrow at 1:00. We'll talk to you then.